AI luminary today is a graduate from MIT. He's a scholar in sales and marketing from Kellogg School of Management, and more recently, a senior partner and vice president with IBM Consulting. He's the president of the global insurance practice at Oz Global Consulting. Mark Smith, welcome to AI Luminaries.
Thank you very much, Alistair. It's great to be here.
And I guess the best way to set the scene, Mark, would be for you to, with all of that background you've got, outline what you're doing today and what is Oz Consulting all about?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Oz Consulting is a privately held consulting firm. We are actually just celebrated our 25th anniversary. We specialize in working with largely P&C clients, but we also have some life clients and healthcare clients, but in helping with their digital transformation. So intelligent workflows, RPA, a lot of integration work around the implementation of core insurance systems like Guidewire, Duck Creek. We also, one of the areas that is really dominating investment today in the insurance area is really around data and analytics, right? And how to build more customer, channel, and product insights. So we have a number of clients that we're working with there to help them kind of aggregate their data across multiple data sources. Most of our customers that have multiple lines of insurance may operate in multiple states, multiple countries, have several different policy admin systems, claims systems, billing systems. So, and they may be anywhere from 20 years old to 5 years old too. So helping to aggregate that to get a single source of truth is where a lot of investment has been made over the last 5 years. And we're really helping them now turn that into business value by helping them get to actionable insights around their customers and around their products and their producer partners, their agents and their brokers that will benefit the customer, but also help them grow profitably.
Well, I'm going to come back to the value piece shortly because I'd like to dig into that, and I'm sure our viewers will want to hear more about that as well. But of course, specifically, you're the president of the global insurance practice, and you're probably best placed then to explain how insurance differs from, if it does, but how it differs from other practice or other verticals that you may have worked in, and what are the specific challenges with the insurance vertical?
Yeah, that's a great question. Insurance, I think, does have some very unique challenges. And that, as a result, if you talk to a lot of consumers, a large percentage of them would typically say that they think that the insurance industry is a lagger, and they judge that based upon their digital experiences in a lot of ways, whether that be retail, even banking. And I think those challenges really have to do with just the nature of insurance. As I was saying before, a lot of companies in the insurance industry have been there, for 75, 100 years. They have grown from single product, which might have been something like personal auto, to being a multi-line provider. And they continue to grow the products that they have out there, because one of the things that the industry does is obviously keep track of what are the emerging risks, whether those could be cyber, whether those are changes in weather patterns that are impacting new areas, new territories, but also much more significant magnitude of hurricanes that we're having today, flooding that we're having today. So it's a constantly evolving industry. So that's complicated, right? How to figuring out what product needs are required out there to safeguard businesses, safeguard the public. And as a result of that, to quickly address those needs, right? That's kind of where we see this proliferation of in the back office of a lot of legacy systems that have to be customized yet again for a new product, for a new offering, for a new territory, for a new business need or customer need. But also, some insurance carriers may have, 15 to 20 different policy admin systems. So here again, being able to put a new product out in market, plus, at least in the US, every state has its own Department of Insurance, its own regulations, what's allowed in pricing, what's allowed in underwriting, what's not allowed. You've got, changing consumer demands, right? Most consumers today, if you look at the Gen Z and the Gen X's, they really are requiring more of a multi-channel experience. Doesn't mean everything's going digital, everything's not going direct to consumer, but they want self-service capabilities, whether that's an experience with a digital virtual agent, like an Alexa or a Siri type of an experience, whether that's portals, apps, etc. So you've got the changing environment and the risks. You've got dynamically and aggressively changing consumer experiences, and you've got a legacy environment of systems that you have to be able to deal with, both from a data standpoint as well as an integration perspective. So I think it's a very, very complex, environment. And in order to be profitable, you've got to constantly be looking for efficiencies, within the margins, which I think most people don't, the margins on insurance, tend not to be like we may see the margins in other industries, because a lot of the risks and events are very unpredictable. So you're using history to predict, the types of claims you're going to have and what the cost of those claims are. Just look at our environment today with inflation. Rental car prices have doubled. You have rental car coverage on your policy, right? The time that you need a rental car is significantly expanding because you can't get the parts to fix your car, right? The cost of replacement is significantly going up. Now, you could take that all the way across, whether it be your business, whether it be your homeowner's insurance. You've got those dynamics as well that you've got to deal with. And how do you deal with that from a pricing and underwriting perspective? And so insurers are constantly focused on how to drive improved efficiency within their operations. And that means a significant investment, in IT in order to help drive those efficiencies. So it's a complex industry, more complex, I think, than many. I've worked largely in the insurance industry in my experience, but I've worked in banking, I've worked in retail, I've worked in hospitality. I've started at oil and gas when I started my career with Anderson Consulting, now Accenture. So I think it's a very challenging environment. And as a result, the insurance industry's had to learn to be nimble and pivot, which is hard when you're carrying all those legacy systems and all that baggage, so to speak, in the trunk.
But by the way, it's interesting to hear that the supply chain problems are affecting the insurance company. And I guess when you think about it logically, why wouldn't that be the case? But I'm interested, and I haven't asked anybody on AI Luminaries this question before, so I'm going to put you on the spot here a bit, Mark. But I'm guessing inside these insurance companies, there's some pretty smart people who understand the technology, etc. So why do large-scale insurance companies need to ask somebody from outside as a consultant to come and help? Why do they do that?
I think for speed to market, in many cases, right? We have a very, very, obviously, consultants have been around for a long time. Systems integrators have been around for a long time. I think today it's even more pronounced because of the labor shortage. So I think that's one piece. I think the second area is that, the technology environment is changing rapidly. You have a lot of emerging technologies, right? Cloud, you've got, artificial intelligence, natural language processing, significant number of, new capabilities on the market with regards to, analytics and data mining. The data landscape has significantly changed in terms of, the concept of big data, third-party data, unstructured data. So I think, being able to deal with the current, right, as I was talking about, but also being able to begin to transform and innovate, leveraging a lot of these emerging technologies, that's where typically I think, insurers go out and look to bring in some of that expertise to help supplement their teams. But I think the other area too, and this is particularly where, we're able to get a lot of offshore talent, is that you do want to move your, in-house resources forward, right? So, but you still have these legacy systems with COBOL, with assembler, with, that somebody's got to help maintain and help migrate forward. So there's also a need there to try to backfill some of that as you, upskill your own in-house resources. So I think there's always going to be, a need for that. I think it's less of a price issue today because everybody has learned how to manage virtual resources globally, not just through COVID. And there's a huge technology base. It's not just about price, huge set of technology resources globally to tap into. So I don't think that's going to change much, but the emerging technologies piece, really, is a driver, I think, of companies going outside to look for systems integrators and consultants to augment their current teams to help them innovate and make that transformation happen and happen faster.
Yeah, as you say, it's the speed to the knowledge, and that puts the pressure on you to make sure you've got all of that knowledge across your organization as up to date as possible. Look, you've worked with some world famous brands, and I guess some you can mention and some you can't. But what is driving major insurance brands today in terms of seeking to automate or adopt conversational AI? Why are they doing it?
I think so. From an automation standpoint, I mean, the digital transformation, digital first, and I think quick to follow. Insights first is going to be next, right? As part of that. So I think the need to be efficient in your operations, the need to be able to address customer expectations, multi-channel is not a trend. It's a fact of life today. I think the traditional pillars that insurers have always relied on, brand, price, product, and the claims moment of truth, those are table stakes. Those are given, right?
Yeah.
So in order to be more efficient, in order to adapt to the constantly changing customer expectations, insurers, need to drive that digital transformation. And they need, many insurers work with brokers and independent agents, right? And they are collaborating more with their distribution partners in order to be able to create a more seamless versus interrupted, customer journey. And you have more distribution options out there today, whether it be embedded insurance, whether it be kiosks, in Walmart and Target. So in order to meet that, being more digital is key. Being more real time, which means more automation of your workflows. There's still, just by implementing a, top of the line, policy admin or claims or billing system doesn't fully automate a lot of the processes that, are part of the insurance operations. So getting to more real-time experiences requires the automation. Getting more efficient requires the automation. And I think AI today, is helping in that digital transformation because, probably, based on some of the research I've looked at, anywhere from 50 to 60% of your millennials, your Gen Zs, your Gen Xs, they want a, kind of a voice assisted or a text assisted experience, not IVR, not a bot, right?
Exactly.
But really sort of a digital virtual agent as part of that self-service, right? They want 7 by 24. Staffing at claims, staffing for first notice of loss in a call center, 7 by 24, hard to do and expensive. Staffing, 100% for a cat, for a major hurricane, very, very hard to do, right? So conversational AI, like digital virtual agents that really can mimic the experience of talking to a person, whether that's through voice or whether that's through a text experience, right, can help improve that customer experience, can facilitate, simply a self-service portal type of experience, right? They want quick and fast and convenient. And this just becomes another tool to help, insurers provide that experience and to provide it in a cost-effective, yet in a fast and efficient way. Now, that's one way for AI, right? Insurance has lots of predictive models. Well, predictive models are based upon historical data, not what's happening today. So typically, you're rewriting those predictive models, whether it's for your underwriting, claim segmentation, et cetera, over and over and over again. So being able to use machine learning to help identify how patterns are changing, right? As customers change, their behaviors change, as risks evolve, as new fraud schemes evolve, right? To be able to detect those real time, right, and help you move forward, not only makes, insurers more efficient, right, but allows them to get more quickly to market to address those things, right? You can use AI to help you identify, during the adjudication process of a claim, if this claim is potentially going to go to litigation, whether that's being able to monitor conversations, being able to monitor emails and texts, understanding in better detail, what claims historically have gone to litigation and why, and to be more proactive, about that, right? Because typically it's part of the, it's a customer experience somewhere in that process, where people get frustrated. So being able to detect those sorts of things. Fraud is typically back end, right? I analyze my data, I find the fraud schemes, I set up my predictive models, I chunk out a report at the back end. Being able to move that up to the front end at first notice of loss, detect it then before you've got the payouts, right? Refer it to the SIU group, but also being able to evolve as, unfortunately, bad actors evolve those schemes to be able to detect those. So there's a lot of opportunity out there for insurers to use the emerging technologies. The big challenge is organizational change management. Because on this side, I've got a business to run, I've got customers to take care of, I got claims to pay, and I've got, if I'm a public company, I got numbers to put up, right? On this side, I've got to figure out how to implement into those operations, right? Seamlessly, with no disruption, of the customer experience, no disruption of the operations, right? It's like drinking from a fire hose. So it's a challenge, I think, for insurers to be able, to manage all those moving pieces. But they do, quite frankly, an amazing job. I mean, what I've seen, I've worked with a number of large carriers. I can probably name some of them, whether they're AIG, they're the Chubbs, they're the Geicos, they're the State Farms, they're the Allstates, as well as a number of, mutuals, out there, which are in everybody's backyard. And they understand the challenges, they understand the needs. They are making significant investments to be able to address those. And I think a lot of the public doesn't understand. We need the insurance carriers. They protect our lives, they protect us financially, they protect our assets, they protect our families. And like I said, they're constantly looking at how do we react to new risks and do it in a timely way. So a lot of moving pieces.
Well, I think definitely that, and it's a deeply complicated subject, sophisticated subject from the technology point of view, and that's why you're here talking about it. And I think I love, by the way, I love that phrase, the claims moment of truth. That's a great point to make. And as for the data, yeah, you're right. You've got to move from lag data to lead data. And using these technologies for an insurance company is going to improve that customer experience dramatically for that generation of people who just want it now, always on demand. But you made a point about transformation and transitioning, and I see lots of content, and I hear lots of analysts in the world telling the C-suite, transform digitally or be left behind. And I guess it's always easier to tell people to transform than actually be doing the transformation yourself. But how do you get the C-suite to transform, Mark? How do you go about it?
Great question. I think about that every day. And it kind of varies by company and where they're at in their transformation. But I think more and more, and it's not just insurance, companies are very financially investment ROI astute. No longer, are you seeing the 10 and 20 and $50 million 5-year projects being funded that can't really be managed on time, on budget. So, companies are taking, smaller and smaller slices. So I think one is just that, you have to help them understand the way forward, right? Because they're just looking at this very, very complicated, technology environment, application environment that they have. So a simple thing, you would think, like, put a self-service portal out there, right? Which, has a CRM and knows me, Mark Smith. Well, that's easier said than done, because I might have an auto policy. I might have a RV. I might have a boat. I might have a couple of jet skis. I have a couple of vacation homes. Oh, and by the way, I'm also a small business customer. Well, that could be 8 different systems, right? That I have to figure out how to seamlessly integrate, allow a single sign-on to pull that data together, make sure it's Mark Smith, because there are a lot of Mark Smiths, right? When I joined IBM, my email was msmith99. I said, I don't think that's going to work. So we obviously put my middle initial in there, and I was able to be, MB Smith 1. Don't quite have that same issue today at Oz, but it's a common name. But the challenge is very few, large and even medium-sized customers today have a 360-degree view of their customer, whether that is a business customer or a personal lines customer, because of the challenge of aggregating the data effectively, keeping it up to date real time, and it changes the entire customer experience. Right? In terms of how I'm operating in a call center. But if I don't know it's Mark Smith, then I can't necessarily use a capability like next best action to say, what should I be recommending to Mark? How can I be proactive? What does Mark need? It was interesting. I did a project for Disney back in 2000, Destination Disney, right? 1,600 people in the call center. Mark Smith calls in. I give Mark Smith the cheapest rack rate for one of the 20 hotels they had on property.
Yep.
I didn't know that Mark Smith comes 4 times a year. He has 3 kids. He likes to play golf. He likes to eat at the Flying Fish. He loves to stay at the yacht club, so that I can make Mark a package offer, and recognize it's the same type of thing, in insurance, right? Either we're reactive or we're proactive. But that transformation challenge, right, is hard to see. How do I get from where I'm at to where I need to be? So I think often working with the C-suite, and that's another reason for consultants, we've done the same thing multiple times for multiple clients. So there's some repeatability, right? It's not like an innovation project, let's fail and learn. To be able to come in and see the way forward, to show how you can chunk it out, but to be clear about, really what is the return on investment? How are we going to reduce our costs? How are we going to improve customer experience? How are we going to improve retention? How does it help us improve profitability? If you take for a couple of insurers, if you can actually reduce, a auto property damage claim, cycle time from say 8 days to 7 days, just by being more efficient, helping the adjusters be more efficient. You take 1 day off a rental car for a few big carriers out there, that's worth $50 million to the bottom line. Well, that certainly helps them be, more efficient. It also helps them be more competitive with rates, which is a big part of being efficient, right? And today we see a lot of rate shopping out there. Save $400, save $500. So that's almost become table stakes,
Yes.
So I think, the big challenge there is you've got to know the industry. You've got to understand the capabilities of the technology, right? You've got to be able to have that conversation, and collaborate with the rest, rest of the C-suite to, help them see where the opportunities are. I think the other thing is more and more clients are looking for a partner, not a vendor, right?
Absolutely.
Don't sell me the 10,000-foot level. I'm not, I've heard all that. I can read that, right? Look, we need to be in this together, right? Don't give me a change request, every, me to death, right? So, really being able to partner with your clients and for them to be able to trust that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. And part of that's convincing in terms of, really understanding what you're talking about and really helping them understand how the project or the transformation is going to get done, I think is another growing expectation of the C-suite. They don't want just vendors to help them with strategic transformations. They want partners. Been there,
by the way,
before, work with me, share the outcome. Yeah.
But I think that's exactly right. And clearly where you're having some success. And I was going to ask you about an example of what profitable growth looks like for an organization. But I think your example of moving from 8 days to 7, I think kind of is just one very powerful example. And I'm sure there's many. I know, Mark, you talk about modernizing applications. But I guess if you're about to modernize or help an organization modernize, how do you figure out what stays and what goes?
I think there's a few things there. One, I would say I definitely recommend before buying something new off the shelf that you really evaluate your opportunities for modernization, right? And part of that is, often you're dealing with monolithic applications that maybe do multiple things, right? Multiple functions. They might do policy admin and billing and claims. 30 years ago, it was one and done. So, and part of the problem with time to market in those is you've got all your rules embedded in there. They're not accessible. You change one thing, you have to test everything. You have a close window of 2 months where you can't make any changes because of that testing. So, really being able to look at the architecture of the legacy applications to see, is there a way to re-architect those? Can you use an API, architecture strategy and microservices. Can you pull out, like one client, we pulled out 53,000 rules. So these were embedded in code in the applications, pulled those out and put those into a rules engine.
Yep.
Right. And in that rules engine, they're able to be, more easily changed and managed. It certainly cuts down the testing impact of changing a rule because you're not impacting the code. But things like that. Now, the other consideration is how old is the technology? Because unfortunately, some of these applications are, no longer being supported. The technology might not be supported. Certainly, if you want to get to cloud, that's a challenge, right?
Yeah.
Because you can't easily migrate some of these technologies to a cloud platform. And in the cloud kind of decision, and I think today the cloud migration is driving a lot of, we've got to look at technical debt. We've got to look at our legacy systems, and because often it goes ignored. There's just too much to do, right? And too much change going on at one time. And a lot of that goes ignored, but availability, in insurance. You can't be down for an hour when your agents are trying to use your system, your customers are trying to use your system. But often those legacy technologies are the source, the root cause of outages and availability challenges. So you've got, it's not an easy question. You've got to kind of look at that, right? And then when you're looking at it from a cloud perspective, it's, can we just lift and shift what we've got? Is there some technology upgrades or remediation to technical debt that's available? Are there paths available? And there are more and more paths available. When I worked for IBM, we had a lot of tools that helped improve, that migration path. And there's more and more, on the market. And then there may be, options where a more surgical modernization and remediation and refactoring of the applications. I typically say, take a look at that very closely, because replacement is a big challenge, especially if you've got a lot of modifications. Now you got to figure out, if I'm not going to make major changes to my business and my current operations, how do I make this fit in this? And the more you get to cloud, the less customization options you have, because in cloud, you're not customizing, those products. You're working through the APIs now. So, that, I think cloud itself is just another one of those disruptors. It makes sense to go there, get out of the data center business, focus on the digital transformations and the actionable insights transformations that you need to have. But that roadmap, I think, is driving a lot of companies in general and insurance companies to really make an assessment, more than even digital first has, of how to re-architect and migrate forward, that legacy environment. So there's no easy answer there. You have to kind of do the homework. But where there is a re-architecture, a refactoring option available, I have found that tends to be the fastest road forward versus, a replacement, a whole replacement of your policy admin. And look, the ROI there typically has always been, I can get rid of a lot of these customizations. I can automate a lot of the manual workflows. Oh, and I can basically take my 8 policy admins to 1. That's a 8 to 10 year journey. Even today, even with some great products on the market, it's a long journey, and it's one that has to be really carefully considered.
Mark, you touched on the subject of chatbots, and I used the phrase conversational AI, and I know that you're really working with conversational AI with a number of your clients. So could you articulate for our viewers the difference between the chatbot and conversational AI in the world of insurance?
Yeah, I think a chatbot is much more structured. It's defined within a box in terms of the questions it recognizes, the terms it recognizes, and the answers it can provide. And as soon as you interact, you're talking to a chatbot. And my view, pretty frustrating experience. Conversational AI is very different. The whole idea of conversational AI, and this has advanced a lot in the last 5 years, right, is that the AI platform understands all the key. Think about insurance. You understand all the key terms. You understand the coverages. You understand the products, right? You train it to understand that context. You can train it to understand the differences, from a regulation standpoint, from state to state. So instead of having a straight line conversation that starts here and ends here, you can have a very broad conversation, right? I can be asking a question about, what deductibles are available, for my personal auto, and then make a comment about, I wonder how the weather is.
Yeah.
And not throw everything, off track.
Yeah.
So I think the idea is, and I think the technology has gotten much, much better than when I first started using it 5 years ago, and it's a lot faster to train, is that the experience is truly like you're having a conversation. It's not scripted. It's not from A to Z, right? You can have a path that winds back and forth. You can ask a question, back up and ask another question that you forgot to ask before. It's like having, a conversation with someone in a call center. And sometimes it's even better, because to train a call center agent to be able to respond to all products, right, that a carrier may, usually they specialize. Usually it takes 6 months, to 8 months to train one of them, right? Yeah. They may not know the answer right off the top of their head, right? So sometimes the experience can be even better, but you can also have things like sentiment analysis, right? So let's say, you're using a diva for a first notice of loss. It's after hours. I'd rather talk to a digital virtual agent than leave a message, right? And same thing if I've been hit by a hurricane. We say, I think I can say this, right? It's very tough to make sure you've got enough butts in the seats to answer all the calls, right? Yeah. So do I want to be on the phone for 40 minutes waiting for you and then get dropped? No. Right? I may want to talk to a diva, but the great thing with some of the technologies like sentiment analysis is, let's say, I get the diva first. The technology can understand, are you getting really frustrated? Or are you really, really emotional? I just had a major car accident. People are injured. I'm injured. I'm scared. Fine. Let's get you to a person, right? Yeah. Let's get you fast. Well, the AI can help make that decision for you too. IVR is not going to do that. Chatbot's not going to do that, right? So if you want to try to prioritize as well those incoming, calls, those incoming first notice of losses, to really get, and I hate to say it, for everybody, a loss is a bad experience, right? But some are worse than others, and some people deal with them differently. Get to the people you need to get to as quickly as you can. So I think it's a great new technology. I think it really helps the customer experience, but I also think it helps the carrier deal with things that are really difficult to predict. And having enough, like I said, butts in the seat to take those first notice of loss, claims calls on the types of, hurricanes, wind, tornadoes, the frequency, the size, the impact of these, it's just very, very difficult to predict that.
And Mark done really, really well. The conversational assistant agent will know that it's not just any Mark Smith, it's you, Mark Smith. and you've got an RV, a boat, and 2 jet skis, and probably can ask you some questions or give you some help on packaging it up. I think that's kind of what you're saying. And
Exactly. It's personal experience, right?
yeah,
It
exactly.
does, you do integrate these platforms,
Yeah,
to, if you will, your back office, to your legacy systems, whether it be claims, billing, um, policy admin, whatever it is, to, create that experience so that they can access that data, they can know who you are, and exactly, you can also be proactive versus reactive, right? If I know you have a jewelry coverage as well as your homeowners, right? You have a boat, it's garaged, out back, right?
yeah,
So I can ask about all those things when you
yeah,
call in, because that tornado just, ripped through your city and your property, right?
yeah,
I know what I have insured with you, right? And
yeah,
I can be proactive about that and know you. Creates a completely different, experience. And often it's easier for the AI platform to gather that data
yeah.
and understand that than
Mm,
sometimes it is for a call center agent who may have to log on and log off of multiple systems, especially if
yeah,
you don't have a CRM, Microsoft Dynamics or Salesforce or something like that,
mm,
as part of your overall, digital, solution, then it's more difficult sometimes in the call center, even as hard as they try. I mean, if you sometimes, I did this for what I was with Farmers Insurance, and this goes way back. And one of my roles was transformation of our 18 service centers. And I just took a video of a service center agent just trying to handle a request for proof of insurance. And I put the music Mission Impossible
mm,
in the background,
yeah,
presented that to the leadership team. And my CEO at the time didn't even ask any questions. Done. Let's get going.
yeah,
It's they have a very, very difficult job, and it takes a long time to train them.
yeah,
So, and often the call center transformation is considered last,
mm,
right?
mm,
But conversational AI is not just about the call center and calls coming in. You can use this on any of your self-service portals. Instead of a chatbot, they can click to talk to, Mark, the digital virtual agent. You can text, you can have a conversation. You've got a question about a quote, a change, your coverage, your deductibles. If I have account bill, how much do I owe? If I only pay X, what policies does it go to? I mean, there's a lot of those questions that you can help facilitate, right? So a lot of clients work with, one of their objectives is try to keep people in channel. So if they start on the web, right, let's try to figure out how to help their experience, help answer their questions, because a lot of things are complicated, and keep them there. If ultimately they need to talk to somebody, we'll get you to somebody. But let's try to facilitate that. And I've seen it used also on sales, on the sales side, right? Where here again, instead of clicking to talk to somebody in a call center and get put on hold, now I want to talk to Mark, right? The digital virtual agent. And Mark, I don't understand. Here was my quote. Now here's my price. What happened? It's twice as much. That's usually
yeah,
where you lose customers, right?
yeah,
So, I mean, even though we have a lot of direct to consumer, that we talk about every day, and insurtechs coming on the market, if you look across the industry, especially at, property and casualty, probably less than 23%, maybe 20% of that insurance is actually bound on the web or on the mobile app without any, intervention by a person,
right,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Usually they get a quote, they start the process to buy it, and they say, I want to talk to somebody because I don't really understand what coverages I need. I don't understand, these deductibles. And as soon as I go from single car to multi-car, uh-oh. it gets more complicated. So it can be served on, the call centers. It can help on any digital, platforms or that you have out there to just, help improve the experience and be more efficient and be fast, easy, and quick, which is what most customers, emerging customers, our Gen X or millennials or our Gen Zs, that's more and more what they expect.
You mentioned personal experience, so I think this is a good place to round up, because I had a question for you, and it's about your personal experience, Mark. Actually, given how many senior executives you work with, how many major brands you work with in the health industry, what do you say to a senior executive watching this who wants to automate or transform the business? What's the single piece of advice you'd give them?
I would say the industry needs to pivot, and they need to pivot to what like I said, digital transformation. We talk about it. We're far from it. Far from it. And we need to pivot to what I call insights first. So just like digital first, even though some would say insights are part of that, insights first. The challenge is they believe they can't do it with their legacy environment. Right? We've been investing in replacing core systems for 25 years. If you look at any of the major, analyst reports out there, what's in the top 3? Replace core systems. Now, I'm not saying you may not need to do that, but I think you've got to figure out a path for modernization and the path for, I'll call it innovation, but to really transform. Because you're never gonna get 100% in this modernization. If I look at a lot of my clients, huge investments, they're still years away. And I think the technologies out there today, especially the API economy, the microservices architectures provide a path forward. And I see more and more clients in the last couple of years adopting that strategy. They've got a chief digital officer in there. Chubb's a great example, and they're really thinking forward. They're trying to do both at the same time, and they are. And there are other carriers out there that I've worked with that do the same, on the same path. So I think they figured that out.
Yeah.
But that would be, that's really my key recommendation. And the other really key thing is the change management.
That's the big one, Mark.
I've seen huge investments in business intelligence, huge. And hey, here's what our customer lifetime value analysis is. Here are our best customers. Here's what they look like. Here's what you need to do to create them. But the big challenge is getting those things into production at the same time you're trying to run the business. And that's where you need sort of, a very agile, incremental approach. Take a bite. Okay? Make it happen. Right? Basically create, iterate in small chunks, manageable risk, to create that repeatable process, right? That you can have confidence in, right? And also to change the culture, because people don't trust the data. Now I've got a single source of truth. Well, it's changed everything. And, I push it back into my underwriting and my actuarial models. Wait a minute, everything's different, right? Or they don't trust the analytics. So I think the technology is not as big an issue as it is the organizational change management and the culture, right? To begin to drive those changes out into the operation. And you've got to have a strategy for that. You've got to have a process for that, right? And you've got to do it incrementally. It's kind of like a funnel. Take little steps, and as things change and people get comfortable and they get used to it and you build trust and you have repeatable processes, you can take bigger and bigger bites, right? But you got to eat the elephant initially and, some small bites and, kind of work your way, if that makes sense.
Well, I think that's clearly where you come in as Oz Consulting. So Mark Smith, a graduate from MIT and world-class consultant on automation and AI in the world's biggest insurance brands. So I really thank you for being an AI Luminary today, Mark. Brilliant. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity.